I know the title of this video may ignite a needless argument, so let's make one thing very clear. I believe Arthur Morgan is the best Red Dead character, no question. And I believe he's one of the best protagonists ever written. Not just in gaming, but compared to others in any media. He's the product of 2 decades of refined writing from the elites of Rockstar, who are sadly no longer a part of the company. There has rarely ever been a gaming character so nuanced in his worldview, so sympathetic in his tragic journey, so admirable with his dialogue, oozing charisma, and so honourable in his willingness to change morally in the second half of his story. I'm not the type of opinionated person that feels the need to put something down in order to bring preferences up. I'm not perfect, but I feel I have a good grasp at separating personal favourites from objective bests. Like how The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind is probably the best Elder Scrolls game, yet Oblivion is my favourite. Or how GTA 5 is probably the best GTA game, but GTA 4 is my favourite. Or even how Jak and Daxter is probably the best Jak game, but Jak 2 is my favourite. Or how Metal Gear Solid 3 is probably definitely the best Metal Gear game, but Metal Gear Solid 1 is my favourite. I could go on forever. The point is, as someone who used to be obsessed with the critiquing perspective of viewing media, I've come to realise that media is so much more than just checking boxes on a critical checklist. Very much like how people themselves are much more than the opinions they chain themselves to. With that tangent out of the way, it's time to explain why John Marston is my preferred protagonist of Red Dead. I've noticed a trend that's beginning to spread recently when it comes to video game protagonists of emotionally driven narratives. It's not a bad trend, but it's something I noticed after God of War Ragnarok, and that is the protagonist becoming, or already is, a morally righteous human being in every way, prioritizing the needs of others, sympathetic to their pain, and letting go of their flawed, selfish desires. It's a very welcome take on protagonists. It makes it easy to like them, and it clearly works. People love morally correct heroes, and so do I, to an extent. But I feel like we're losing the art of the anti-hero. It's easy to love characters with great moral values. It's an escapist fantasy of being close to good people. But to make people love morally grey protagonists, that is great writing that makes them so much more memorable and unique. It didn't take 3 re-releases and a TV show of The Last of Us to feel the impact of Joel's character. He left such an impression because of his broken persona that caused him to make very selfish decisions. Yet people still love him. Why? Because he's interesting. He can't make the hard decision. He can't overcome the heavy obstacles and be a positive role model for kids. He's a deeply flawed anti-hero, a reflection of all our darkest tendencies that would surely surface in a global situation like this. Anti-heroes make for some creative stories because you're not limited by moral values, adding to the unpredictability of the character. Which brings me to good old John Marston. John is not as morally grey as Joel, but he is, for all intents and purposes, an anti-hero. He may be very helpful and relatively sympathetic to those who need it, but for most of the main characters he comes across, he uses them to gain a step in his overall goal, complete his mission, return to his family. That's all he cares about at the end of the day. He gets restless when he's put on countless errands in order to gain information. He sides with both parties of the Mexican Revolution, including the apathetic government. Not quite the heroic endeavour. He stands up and helps the common man when he can, but when it comes to choosing to help for the sake of helping and returning to his family, you can bet he's leaving you in the dust. And I just love that. It's so refreshing to return to his character today. But John is a lot more than his anti-hero persona. Why do I root for him the most out of all the Red Dead characters? Well, for one, I root for him because he has so little going for him. He starts out in Red Dead 2, a 26-year-old father. He ain't the brightest of the bunch, being tossed around by his superiors and exploited for his loyalty. Yet he starts to prove himself pretty early on as an effective gunslinger and strategic criminal, which even Arthur notices as he begins to warm up to him. During this time, John matures a lot, beginning to face the responsibility of fatherhood, whilst also trying to balance his commitment to the gang. After Jack is captured and saved, his priorities seem to tip in the favour of protecting his family, which gets accentuated when Dutch begins to lose his mind. John gets arrested, close to being hanged, and his father figure for so long makes it clear that he was going to be left there to rot. John gets shot and left for dead, survives, comes back, and decides his family and their safety is all that matters now. When Arthur dies and John goes into hiding, he has so little to his skill set other than gunslinging, constantly moving from place to place hiding, unable to use his name. He's a huge burden on his family and situations arise forcing him to enact his more violent tendencies. On top of that, he struggles to draw and write, something Arthur was very skilled at and could have made a life out of in another circumstance. John has no skills like that. But despite all of this, he somehow manages to pull through, buy and set up a ranch, providing a comfortable life for his family, for a little while anyway. Even though John had grown so much as a person, he still had one very human flaw, a flaw that 90% of us would cave into in the same situation: vengeance. And thank God the first game happened, because if John chose the morally correct decision here, you'd lose the second half of an incredibly interesting story. A happy ending does not suit Red Dead. Regardless of how the general viewing audience favour happy endings, Red Dead stands out because it didn't conform to typical story tropes. It stands out because it takes a darker and infinitely more interesting approach. Let's talk about John in the first game. God, I love this man. It's 4 years after Red Dead 2's epilogue ends. John is now 2 years older than Arthur when he died. He has changed so much. No longer is he the passive character hiding under the weight of having a massive price on his head. He's now confident, charismatic, and much more intelligent. Although he's in an awful situation, you can tell he's slightly relieved, no longer having to bury himself in the public eye for his past misdeeds. He can even use his actual name now. Not only that, he can now be that skilled gunslinger he used to be, without apologizing for it. So even though he doesn't want to go back to this life, you can tell by his confident body language and subtle voice performance, he's begrudgingly enjoying it. It doesn't matter that the circumstances haven't really changed. He's still being tossed around by superiors, but he's always been a dangerous outlaw. Only difference now is, he's been authorized to be one. It's because of this development that John becomes his best self, combining the abilities of a Hollywood Western outlaw with the insight and pragmatic worldview of a bad man trying to change for the sake of his family's future. Which is why I feel so much more sympathy for him by the game's end than I do of the fates of any other Red Dead character. He's always been someone's toy, being exploited for his skills as a gunman. And it doesn't matter the great feats he accomplished in the pursuit of betterment, he died like a dog. No build-up, no dramatic emotional music pulling you in. He's just shot by the US Army officials and chokes on his own blood as he dies unceremoniously. The initial shock of seeing that for the first time will never leave my mind. With Arthur, we all knew he was going to die. Not because he didn't exist in the first game, but because Red Dead 2 tells you outright that he'll die. So with that warning, Arthur breaks free and makes his own decisions for the well-being of others. We're more than mentally prepared for his end. And he even gets the death he always talked about wanting, staring at the gorgeous sunrise as he takes his last breath in peace. Even though John's death came as a shock, what's interesting about revisiting the ending is that although John seemed to believe he was off the hook and now can live in peace, you can tell it was always lingering in the back of his mind that he was not going to be allowed to live. As the first thing he does when seeing the soldiers rushing towards his house is immediately switch to affirmative action while accepting his inevitable death. There's no moment of shock questioning why the soldiers are hunting him. He just immediately accepts the situation and prioritizes the safety of Jack and Abigail. It's just an interesting character moment that caught my eye and I feel it's overlooked. It's the perfect way to end this tragic anti-hero's tale. And what an anti-hero he is. John wouldn't be nearly as interesting if he was a more morally righteous character. It's quite amazing Rockstar created such a nuanced take on the protagonist back in a time where gaming was barely finding its footing in how to craft deep and well-written characters. Either you were an apathetic criminal free to go kill and steal all you want, or a flawless hero who only cares about saving people. Both types of characters are amazing in their own right, if written well, but none quite grab my attention like that of an anti-hero. So please don't let this type of character die out in modern storytelling. For that and many other reasons, John is my favourite character in Red Dead, followed by Arthur. And then Jean Bo Finley. No, just joking. Dutch van der Linde, of course. Hell, even the strange man takes an interest in John, and he's this world's version of the devil, or God, or death, depending on whatever theory you believe. Thanks for watching.